Hey everybody, Jane here, and today I'm talking about the book versus the David Suchet movie version of The Mysterious Affair at Styles. For those who don't know, I started this year last year, 2019, doing a project of trying to read through the Poirot books. I'm only on book 5 right now. It's been a slow project, but I started watching the Poirot television series. And I watched a biography or a documentary. I'm not sure what I watched, but in it, David Suchet had mentioned that they had done a movie for each of the novels. So I thought, I'm going to have to do a book comparison and movie comparison for these novels as I go through. Particularly because I'm not typically doing full book reviews on the Agatha Christie books themselves. So far, I've been kind of neutral about most of them. I've read 5. One I loved, one I hated, and the other 3 have been pretty neutral. So far, I just am talking about the differences in these instead. I will say that this video will have some spoilers. If you have seen the movie or read the book, you're good to go. If you haven't done either, you might not want to watch this because we're going to be talking a little bit about who the killer is. These are congruent. There's not a lot of differences in them as far as the mystery itself goes. So if you've seen this, it spoils this. And if you've seen this, or if you've read this, it spoils this. So either one, if you've participated, you know who done it and why. So the first thing I will say about these is I wanted to talk a little about the casting versus the way I'm reading the characters in the books. I am not sure how old Poirot is supposed to be in the books or in the movies, but I would say the way that David Suchet plays him, where they have him in probably his 50s, maybe his 60s, but probably his 50s, I'm guessing. I feel like that is a very accurate portrayal of Poirot. I think that is a good time for him. We know he is not a young man. He was a very famous police detective. So we know he is, he's not in his 20s. He's not in his 30s, probably not in his 40s. I'm not sure back in the early 1900s when they considered somebody a little bit on the older side. We also frequently have Hastings thinking that Poirot has gotten old enough to lose his edge. So I do think that assuming that he's in his 50s or 60s is probably a fairly accurate thing. This Poirot is a little bit nicer to Hastings, I think, than the book Poirot. The book Poirot throws a lot of zingers at Hastings that Hastings doesn't always recognize. And I think in some ways, this Poirot he's kinder to Hastings. He still does think he's better and smarter, but he's not as rude about it. In the book, Poirot sometimes is really, really cruel to Hastings, who's kind of his partner in solving these mysteries. And while I get a kick out of that and I think it's hilarious, I do appreciate this version of it as well, with him being a little kinder to Hastings and a little more understanding of his friend. The friendship element in these videos works a little better for me than the books. And part of that is, in the books, while Hastings is a player, in a lot of the stories, he is not as main a character as I would say in the series. In the television series, it is like Hastings and Poirot. Everything is these two trying to figure out the crime, and Poirot is very much the Sherlock, and Hastings is very much the Watson. Hastings, as a character in the books, only appears, I believe, in 8 of the 30-some novels. So he is a recurring side character. And he is often a narrator for our stories, as in The Mysterious Affair at Styles and in The Murder on the Links and in The Big Four as well. But he's just not as vital and intricate, I think, in the book series as in the movies. And I do hope that as I watch the other movies, they will find ways to incorporate Hastings even when he is no longer really in the stories. Now Hastings, let's get on to him. I think that Hastings is very different in the book and the movie versions. The Hastings in our book, I am guessing, is significantly younger than Poirot for a lot of reasons, including that in the second book, he meets a girl who is, he guesses, about 17. And they have kind of a romantic thing. If you've read the books, you know that he ends up married to this girl who was like 17. And if he's as old as he is in this, is kind of gross. In this, I would say our Hastings is probably late 30s, early 40s. So he's not significantly younger than Poirot. Whereas I would say in this series, the books, he is probably in his late 20s or early 30s. I hope he is, because otherwise the fact that he is married to a girl he perceives as 17, I don't know how old she really is. I don't remember if they tell us in Murder on the Links how old she actually is by the end of it, but it's grody. Like, I don't want a 40-year-old marrying a 17-year-old. That's weird. Late 20s, yeah, I can see it. Late 30s, okay. Hastings also is very girl crazy in the books. We get that in the movies a little bit, but in the movies he is a little more, it's a more gentlemanly thing. Poirot in the books teases him about, his head turns every time he sees a girl, and he kind of loses his ability to think properly. And in this one, we have Hastings having more of like an old-fashioned, gentlemanly, protective, gallant view, I would say, with women. So I did like the casting very much. And again, I've been watching the TV series, which I absolutely love, but for comparisons of this, we're assuming, let's pretend, that it started here. I don't know if the series started before the novels, or if I don't know if they started making movies of the novels before the series, or if they started the series and then started making movies of the novels. However, let's pretend that this is the first thing they did, because I don't know if it is or isn't, to go with this first novel. And casting-wise, there's a significant age difference, I would say, from the book to the movie. Other casting choices that I really liked: Alfred and Evelyn. Evelyn and Alfred in the movie are very well cast. They have a lot of similarities in their looks, which is not really mentioned so much in the book. We are told in the book that they are distantly related, cousins of some kind, so we can assume a family resemblance. But for the movie and for some of the things that happen in the movie, I think they did an excellent job casting for Evelyn and for Alfred, because for those who don't know how this goes, which again, spoilers here, promised you. Evelyn and Alfred worked together to murder Miss Inglethorpe, and at one time, Evelyn dressed up as Alfred to give him sort of an alibi. It's a weird way the story works, but she bought poison while dressed up as Alfred so that Alfred could be seen far away not buying the poison, and prove that he could not possibly be the killer, even though they actually worked together to murder Miss Inglethorpe. Another thing, I just felt in the movie that everybody was cast a little on the old side. John and Lawrence, who are the sons of Miss Inglethorpe, I felt like they were probably in their late 30s, early 40s in this movie. And honestly, in the book, I had pegged them for like 20s or 30s. So again, I would say that They made in these movies in general, and it makes sense because they're supposed to be Hastings' friends, and so since Hastings is cast a little old, it makes sense to cast these people a little old. But I did feel like that was incongruous with my experience reading the book, especially the first time reading through before I'd seen the movie at all, or even the TV series. I had pictured the sons, John and Lawrence, as in their 20s or 30s. They are still living at home. They're not being super productive with their lives. And I will say, too, that in the movie, John was a little bit less sympathetic of a character than he is in the book. He's not a great guy even in the book. He is having an affair. But in the book, we also are told the story through Hastings' point of view, and John is his friend. So I think we get a more positive view of John through the book than we do in the movie, where, you know, right away we can kind of see he's kind of a jerk and he has some issues. Another thing that I think they did really well in the movie version is they really showed us the effect of the war on Hastings a little more maybe than the book. In the book, Hastings is only slightly affected by the war. He makes a couple references, but, you know, he's there because of an injury. And I think in the movie they really played up the trauma that he'd experienced being a soldier, whereas in the book that is not a hugely important thing. It's touched on a little bit, but I felt like the movie did it a lot better. The cinematography in the movie had it look very old compared to, for instance, the TV series, the Poirot TV series. As a matter of fact, I was a little bit thrown because I'd been watching the Poirot TV series before I found out about these movies. And so then to turn on the movie, it looked so much older. And I was like, what is happening? Why are we doing this? We have the technology to make it not look so old. Like, I want it to look old in the setting, but I don't want the coloring of my screen and stuff to make it look like an old movie. So I was a little not loving that, but I think they probably did it again to make it look more old. But Acorn Media does a lot of they do a lot of historical mysteries, and I prefer when they have the coloring of the screen to look more modern. I believe Acorn also is the ones that does my Murdoch mysteries, which I love, and the Poirot series, and I'm like, okay, these are both, if you watch them, they don't have that older look. You know, they don't look like movies from like the 70s coloring wise. So I'm not sure why they chose to do that with this movie. Again, it is possible that this was movie number 1 before the TV series. I don't know. Which would be the only reasonable explanation for why we can't have normal coloring. But I digress. Another thing that is a lot different in the book, because we are in the point of view of Hastings, we only can see what Hastings sees. Whereas in the movie, we get some scenes and things that Hastings didn't see. And in some ways, I think that is a disadvantage. I think this movie would be a little hard to follow if you haven't read the book. Because a lot of the scenes and the things we're told about, we see, but they're maybe not really clear what we're seeing. And I do like that in this book, everything is verbalized. We have them sitting down and saying, this is the conversation we overheard, instead of just overhearing a conversation. In both stories, in fairness, I feel like it's really hard to guess what happened and how things were brought about. That was one of the complaints I have in general about Christie's work, is I feel like she often doesn't give us enough information to decide on our own who the killer is and to unravel it. Like, Poirot is a great detective, but he's a great detective because we aren't told everything. A lot of this, of course, has to do with the point of view being from Hastings, who doesn't always see what Poirot does, and Poirot often withholds information from Hastings. And he's always telling Hastings, he's like, no, you have the information to solve this. No, Hastings doesn't, and neither do I. And the random stuff that you're telling me, I don't have enough information. So I just have to go with it and believe that what you're saying is true because it don't make any sense to me. I've read this book now 3 times and I've been trying so hard to be like, I need to see the breadcrumbs. Show me the breadcrumbs. And there just aren't enough breadcrumbs. It doesn't feel like she laid them and I just missed them. It feels like they just weren't really laid. Another comment I will make is that I feel like the movie is a really slow start. In the movie, we are 25 minutes into an hour and 43 minutes for the murder to happen. And in this one, the murder happens on page 32. 32 out of 246. So, maybe close to a quarter through, but not even really a quarter. It just seems like it takes place a lot quicker in the book than it did in the movie. And granted, the book is a lot longer, but I just felt like it was so slow to get to the murder. Whereas in the book, we're in the murder by chapter 3, and I was all for it. One other thing that was really cool that the movie did was it shows Poirot's attempts as a refugee to immigrate into English society, where we are really not shown that at all in any of the books that I've noticed so far, and I'm on book like 5. So I did enjoy that aspect of Poirot in the movies, of seeing him try to integrate into English society, because he's like, we live here. He tells his other Belgian refugee friends, he's like, we live here, we need to be part of this society. Other than that, the book and the movie follow pretty closely. I didn't have a lot to say about the characters or the plot or anything that was different, because other than the casting choices, everything else, and some of the timing, everything else is very similar. That is not always the case. I will be doing a book and movie comparison on the Big Four, and the Big Four movie is significantly different than the book. So yeah, I did want to just kind of say that as a beginning of the movie series connected to the book series, while some of the casting choices are a little bit different, this is very solidly similar to the book, and I had a good time with both. All right, guys, this is Jane. My social media is below if you would like to connect with me. Also down there are a list of and links to my books on Amazon and Smashwords. If you are in Kindle Unlimited and you like to read romance, I have several books that you can check out for free if you are a Kindle Unlimited customer. If you are new here, please subscribe to this channel and hit like if you enjoyed this video. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.